All right. Hello, everybody. What? Awkward opening. How's it going, everybody? Sorry, I'm kind of off my game right here. I actually just got out of the shower and I'm not even in my attire. Thus, why I just have the profile pic in front of here instead of actually doing live footage. But anyway, enough meandering about. So, unless you have been living under a rock, you would know that the 2018 midterm elections here in the United States are tomorrow on Tuesday, November 6th. And so, before the election actually happens, I have some articles, one of them in particular that I have been saving for at least a week now, if not two. And I wanted to actually get it out and read it before the election happened. I meant to actually read it yesterday, but I did not get to that because, for one thing, Strike Force yesterday was so freaking long. And I'm not even going to have the co-hosts on for this evening. I just want to make it a quick 30 to 40-minute episode of Strike Force just to get this out of the way. So, yes, 2018 midterm elections. So here I got one article from The Telegraph, an article from Daily Caller, and an article from USA Today. First, for anybody who doesn't really care that much about the midterm elections, the Telegraph here, this particular writer anyway, is going to be telling us why tomorrow's congressional elections matter. And I think that is something that has to be reiterated and articulated many times to people out there, because there are lots of people who do not care enough about politics to get out and vote. I mean, particularly during the midterm elections. People typically turn out more for the presidential elections because people give too much credit for what power the president actually has, when really the Congress is really freaking important as well. For example, the Republicans during most of Obama's tenure prevented him from getting passed through a minimum wage that was any higher than $7.25. If my memory serves me correctly, I think they already passed that one minimum wage hike, federal minimum wage hike, during the first 2 years of Obama's term when he still had control of both houses of Congress. But then the Republicans kept on standing firm on that issue. That is just one example of how important midterm elections are. And it's pretty much a general fact as well that during the 6 out of the 8 years of Bill Clinton's administration, Republicans had him in gridlock pretty much as well. How many government shutdowns that were there actually? 6? I almost want to say that there was 6. I mean, I know that it was quite a few, probably about around half a dozen. But anyway, enough of my layman's opinion on why midterm elections matter. Let's see what the Telegraph has to say. And by what I generally hear, the Telegraph is a reliable source for news. So anyway, here we go. U.S. midterm elections 2018. Why tomorrow's congressional elections matter. Tomorrow's midterm elections will mark 2 years since Donald Trump's shock election victory, the first test of how his Republican Party is faring in the eyes of the American public. The midterms is the name given to the combination of elections for the U.S. Congress, governorships, and other statewide races that take place every 2 years. Thank you for giving us that no-duh piece of information right there. Republicans currently control the House of Representatives and the Senate, the two chambers which make up the Congress. But pundits have suggested the elections may see a so-called blue wave of Democrats sweeping into power. Now, I think that it's a possibility that it's going to at least be a blue ripple, but I doubt that it's going to be a blue wave. I highly doubt that much, at least. As a Daily Caller will go in further talking about how Democrats are predicted to take control of the House. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. For right now, a liberal base hoping to derail Mr. Trump's agenda has energized activists in key races, out fundraising and out polling a host of Republican incumbents. From what I generally hear, Beto O'Rourke actually out fundraised Ted Cruz in his particular race for federal U.S. Senator from Texas. The elections mark the midpoint in a president's 4-year term, and this year they will be held on Tuesday, November 6th. Although Mr. Trump is not on the ballot, No shit, Sherlock. In many ways, the results will be seen as a referendum on his accomplishments and how voters feel about the U.S. president. Yeah, I mean, that's one thing that I have to say. I think people play too much guilt by association with how responsible the president. Oh, I did not want to see that. Thank you. Stop screen sharing for a moment till that goes away. But I think that people, generally speaking, give a little bit too much, play a little bit of guilt by association, I would say, regarding of how responsible the president is for what happens in Congress. For example, Reagan is not responsible for every single thing that was done under his presidency. He was fighting tooth and nail against the Democratic controlled House of Representatives during 6 of his all of his 8 years actually. I think the last 2 years of his presidency, he was fighting both the Democratic Senate and House of Representatives, if my memory serves me correctly. But I think that with 6 of those years, he at least was able to work with a Republican-controlled Senate, but still a Democratic-controlled House of Representatives. He had to fight against that. And for example, there was the immigration bill, or at least I think one could call it an immigration bill, back in 1986, of where that he signed an amnesty bill for 3 million illegal immigrants. And in a trade, supposedly, the Democrats were supposed to fund a border fence, which is a little hop and skip over that in comparison to the proposed Trump wall, which means that it would have been considerably weaker than what Trump was proposing, but still. And the Democrats refused to push forth any funding for that border fence that Reagan thought he was signing for. So yeah, the Democrats basically deceived him on that part. Democrats got their way, Republicans did not get their way on that issue. And that's just one example. That's just one example out of many of where that the president had to fight against their Congress, against the Congress. And even in some cases, the president had to fight against his own party's controlled Congress. For example, FDR. He wanted to load up the Supreme Court with what was it, 8 more justices at least, or no. It was 6 more justices. Bring it from 9 to 15. But the Democrats, I mean, he had a Democratic-controlled Congress, both House and Senate, for most of his tenure. And even his own party did not let him get his way on that. So that's just one example. But enough of my meandering on that. Just to sum it up, yeah, I think people play too much guilt by association regarding of how responsible the president is for what happens in Congress. President Trump and Paul Ryan do not exactly agree on 100% of the issues, one in particular being immigration. But anyway, how do the midterms work? All 435 seats in the House of Representatives will be voted on in November. Representatives serve 2-year terms, so the entire House will face re-election in 2020. Some 35 out of the Senate's 100 seats will be on the ballot, and 36 state governors are up for election. Senators hold 6-year terms. Excuse me. There are also a number of statewide local offices being elected on the same day. Gubernatorial elections. Governors hold powerful positions since they control huge budgets and implement their state's laws. Republicans currently control 33 out of 50 governorships and 2/3 of 99 state legislature chambers. Oh, okay. Some 36 governorships are being elected this November, and Democrats are targeting the 23, which have Republican incumbents up for re-election. Hold on for a second. I'm going to see. It says why tomorrow's congressional elections matter. I hope this is going to be talking about 2018 specific, and they're just not just speaking in vague generalities and the general standard as to why midterm elections are important. I mean, I think they're always important, but hopefully this election or this article will get into specifically why 2018 is important rather than just midterm elections in general. Key races to watch are in Ohio, Michigan, Florida, and Pennsylvania. Key swing states in the presidential elections. Governors in those states will be crucial to mobilizing party activists and raising donations for the 2020 race. How will they affect Donald Trump's presidency? The elections will shape U.S. politics for at least the next 2 years. A Republican-controlled Congress will make the final 2 years of Mr. Trump's first term much smoother, giving him the power to continue funding his border wall with Mexico. Okay, I mean, he's kind of belated on that. I mean, I keep on saying that he's kind of being lackluster in his border wall promise, but he's not completely fizzing out on that issue. He's just being rather slow, it seems. Pass further tax cuts and make another attempt to repeal Obamacare. Okay, as far as tax cuts go, I do not know specifically if there needs to be like another income tax cut. Like we already have one, and I think that's good enough for Trump's part anyway. I mean, it'd be great if he like extended for the lower income earners income taxes to be longer lasting, income tax cuts to be longer lasting. That would be great. But still, as far as repealing Obamacare, yeah, I would like it if we repealed the one regulation that basically mandated that that businesses with over 50 employees have to cover their own employees. I mean, I, as a libertarian who believes in private property rights and believes that business rights falls under private property rights, and thinks that, and I believe full-heartedly that Obamacare invades upon private property rights in that area. They already repealed the individual mandate, but still, they got a little ways to go with the ACA. If Democrats regain control, they will fiercely oppose a number of Mr. Trump's key policies. If they win enough seats, the Democrats could kill the Republican legislative agenda on Capitol Hill. A Democratic majority would also see the party gain seats on congressional committees with the power to investigate the Trump administration. This year's statewide races are incredibly important too, since they will give the party in office power over the next redistricting process, the system by which voting areas are decided. Republicans are most likely to lose control of the House of Representatives as all 435 seats are up for election. Dozens of Republican representatives are retiring, and the Democrats only need around 24 more seats to take control of the lower chamber. Mr. Trump's party is likely to retain its majority in the Senate, as only 35 of the 100 seats are up for election, 26 of which are already held by Democrats. Democrats would have to win all its Senate races and pick up 2 Republican seats in order to swing the majority, a tall order. What are the key issues deciding the races? The economy, immigration, and impeachment are the issues getting most play on the campaign trail. Yeah, I mean, that's something that I haven't been keeping much in mind, is regarding impeaching Trump. Hello, Lonely Wolf. How are you doing? Because I haven't heard that idea be floated about recently, but I can only imagine that the Democrats have not given up on that possibility if they were to take the House of Representatives. That they would, I cannot say that they would not definitely impeach Trump. In fact, it's probably a high possibility that they would definitely try their best on that. Although they would be foolish to do so, because you would get yourself in you guys' own view, a worse politician than Trump, that being Mike Pence becoming president. So you'd have to do like 2 impeachment sessions in order to ultimately get, I guess, Nancy Pelosi as the president of the United States for at least the remaining 1 to 2 years of the presidency anyways. The U.S. economy is booming with low unemployment rates and rising wages. I think that those low unemployment rates, those supposedly low unemployment rates, are being like artificially deflated to make Trump look good in the same way that they were being deflated during the Obama presidency. Like people were not keeping much in mind of the labor force participation rate under Obama. I haven't been hearing much talk about the labor force participation rate under Trump. At least not by mainstream political pundits anyway, and politicians. And rising wages. However, Mr. Trump's tax cuts for corporations have increased the country's deficit by 33% in the last year to $895 billion. Well, the idea on tax cuts is that it would help people grow their own wealth and ultimately climb to a higher tax bracket to give higher revenue to the government. That's the idea behind tax cuts. And, you know, it's kind of something that S-Man kind of, well, I guess it hasn't been like properly articulated to him. This principle right here, this theory regarding tax cuts, that it would ultimately increase revenue, but it's still something that I don't think that S-Man is keeping in mind. I would not say intentionally because, again, I think he's just not been articulated that theory, but still. I wonder if Humane Mind actually said it to him on any live stream that I hadn't seen of theirs. Anyway, immigration is a divisive issue. Yes, it does not get much more divisive than immigration. With Democrats keen to highlight Mr. Trump's hardline rhetoric and his administration's decision to separate migrant children from their parents as part of its zero-tolerance policy, they hope it will entice younger voters and minorities to vote against the president's party. Republicans have warned Democrats would like to see immigration and customs enforcement ICE officials scrapped. Now, here's what I think about ICE. I mean, I saw a live stream between S-Man Speaks and Aircraft Sparky. I think it was with Aircraft Sparky anyways, where they said that the Department of Homeland Security, the DHS, could basically do the same processes that ICE is doing right now. So on a principled side of things, I don't necessarily disagree with ICE, but on a monetary and fiscal side of things, I disagree with the existence of ICE. Like, it just seems to be a frivolous waste of money, I would safely say, where you already have another organization, another agency that can do pretty much the same actions that ICE does now, and maybe even better, in a better way. But I don't know. That would have to be something that I would have to individually research on. But anyways, which they say will lead to weak borders as they appeal to voters. Okay, one thing that I got to quickly comment on that is that technically, I don't think ICE is border security. They just deal with more of the domestic side of things, like inside the country, rather than with the actual border. They just deal with the tracking down of illegal immigrants that possibly need to be deported, or most likely need to be deported. Not with the actual enforcement of the borders, which they say will lead to weak borders as they appeal to voters. Ultimately, this election will be seen as a temperature test for Mr. Trump ahead of the 2020 presidential election. This has already played out in this summer's primaries, where party members pick their candidates, with pro-Trump, anti-establishment figures winning against the Republicans' old guard. The pro-Trump side of things, I don't necessarily much agree with. I mean, I wouldn't call myself pro-Trump. I think Trump is a mixed bag. He can be pretty inarticulate, and above all other things, I disagree with the idea of tariffs. And I disagree with his stance on free trade in general. He seems pretty against it. So I would not call myself pro-Trump. But if you have like a whole bunch of lockstep Trumpists elected to the Congress, well, obviously it makes it easier for Trump to get through some of his legislative agenda, which some of his legislative agenda, some of it, keep in mind there, some of it, not all of it, some of it I do agree with, but again, not all of it. And for the other parts that I disagree with, again, it would be easier for him to get passed through with a lockstep Congress that is vehemently pro-Trump. So that side I disagree with. Anti-establishment, though, I completely agree with that. I think the establishment is weak and, for the most part, have principles that I disagree with. Figures winning against the Republicans' old guard. On the Democrat side, populist progressives who are vocal in their opposition to the president, even calling for his impeachment, have been gaining ground on the party's centrists. Okay, yeah, I mean, that's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is one of those people, but I'm not so sure if I ever heard her actually advocate for the impeachment of Trump. I mean, that seems to be more of a corporate Democrat type agenda to be pushing through there, is impeaching Trump. And as far as I know, Cortez is at least not an establishment corporate Democrat. Historical record of midterm elections. Disgruntled voters often use midterm elections to punish the party in power. The president's party has lost an average of 32 seats in the House and 2 in the Senate in almost every midterm since the American Civil War. Dang. Thanks for that little factoid there, Telegraph. Democratic President Bill Clinton faced a 6-year battle to get his policies through Congress when the Republicans took control of both the House and Senate in 1994. Okay, so I was only half true in what I said earlier. Republicans did not take control of just the House, they took control of the Senate as well. But overall, pretty much reiterating what I said earlier. Just mentioned the other part that I had forgotten about. The Democrats retook both chambers in 2006, allowing President Barack Obama to push through his policy agenda for the first 2 years of his presidency. However, the Republicans won back the House in 2010, which placed a significant curb on his ability to pass key legislation for the rest of his time in office. In 2014, the Republicans also regained control of the Senate, boosting their House majority to its largest since 1929 along the way. Democrats are currently enjoying an 8-point lead in polls, and with a record number of women, veterans, and ethnic minorities running for office. The face of the U.S. Congress would look very different in January. However, the Democrats' success is based on the party's ability to mobilize their base. The midterm electorate is traditionally whiter, older, and more conservative. I don't think there is much denial of that. By the way, end of article right here. I don't think there is much denial of that because typically the right is more active during the midterm elections than the left is, the American left versus the American right, in America at least. And generally speaking, at least, when it comes to American politics, white older folks tend to be more right-wing than younger and darker folks in the U.S. Lonely Wolf says, I do like Ocasio-Cortez. Democrats need her to clean out the cobwebs from within the party, starting with Hillary's vag. No thanks, Wolf. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with Ocasio-Cortez. And I would take many other people to be filling her seat. Like, say, for example, Austin Peterson. I know that Austin Peterson does not live in New York and thus could not run for that seat, even if he wanted to, for that, was it Senate or House of Representatives? No, I think it was House of Representatives. I don't think he could run for that seat if he wanted to, but that's just still one example of somebody that I would rather see in office than Ocasio-Cortez. But on the other hand, at least she's principled. She has more principles than Hillary Clinton probably ever will. Except for my vagina. You know? Anyway. So moving on to the next article. The Daily Caller. The midterm elections are 1 week from today. Here's what you can expect. Okay, and here's the 3 main points of this article. Polling indicates that many races across the U.S. are much tighter than expected. Republicans will likely maintain control of the Senate. Democrats are predicted to take control of the House. Okay, so Daily Caller typically is, okay, thanks, but no thanks. I don't want those ads. But anyway, some of her, okay, Lonely Wolf says, some of her policies are a bit unrealistic, but she is a heck of a spokesman. Don't you mean spokeswoman? You misgendered her, Lonely Wolf. You utter bigot. So anyway, so typically the Daily Caller is actually a more right-leaning internet news source, but still at the same time they're taking more of an objective approach to this. I think with them full-heartedly admitting that Democrats are predicted to take control of the House, most likely to take the House. So anyway. The 2018 midterm elections are 1 week away. So yeah, this is an old article. This is the article that I've been saving up for a little bit and wanted to get to yesterday, but couldn't. But now I finally am. Let's see what Daily Caller has to say. And both Democrats and Republicans are gearing up for some extremely tight races across the country. According to a majority of polling, Republicans are expected to lose control of the House but keep control in the Senate after the November 6th midterm elections. However, there is growing speculation that Republicans could be more successful than polls suggest. Interesting. Okay, I did say earlier that they were taking more of an objective approach, but I don't know. Let's see how biased the Daily Caller actually turns out to be. Who knows? In the Senate, there are 6 seats that are currently listed as toss-up elections, 4 of which belong to current Democratic senators. According to Real Clear Politics, Republicans need to maintain 51 seats in the Senate in order to keep majority. Thank you for stating the obvious there. No thanks. Excuse me. 5 of the candidates in those toss-up Senate races are incumbents, including Democrats John Tester, of Montana, Bill Nelson of Florida, Joe Donnelly, of Indiana, Claire McCaskill of Missouri, and Nevada Republican Senator Dean Heller. The Senate race in Arizona is also listed as a toss-up, as Republican Representative Martha McSally is running against Democratic Representative Kirsten Sinema for GOP Senator Jeff Flake's seat, who announced in October 2017 that he would not seek re-election. I'm sure that that Mark Levin is definitely happy of that, because as far as I know, Mark Levin does not like Jeff Flake. But it's been a while since I've listened to Mark Levin, a full show of his anyways. I have to get back into more often listening to his show. But anyway. Democrats have been predicting a blue wave for the midterm elections, hinting that they will win back a majority in the House and pick up a large number of seats in local state races and gubernatorial races across the country. In the House, there are 32 seats that are listed as toss-up elections. Democrats must pick up at least 24 seats in order to get to the 218 seats needed for majority. While Democrats are expected to win control of the House, Republicans could pick up a few Senate seats from toss-up races. Okay. If Democrats do win the House, the party will have to... Okay. Anyway. Sorry, I have to restart that. Had a bit of a brain fart. If Democrats do win the House, the party will have to select a speaker. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi has previously said she thinks she'll be the next Speaker of the House, despite comments from Democratic Representatives Kathleen Rice of New York, Seth Moulton of Massachusetts, Philemon Vila of Texas, and Tim Ryan of Ohio, who have all called for Pelosi to relinquish her leadership role. And I would encourage that, me personally. If Republicans maintain control of the House, Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy hopes to become the next speaker. But some Republicans have said they want to see Majority Whip Steve Scalise or House Freedom Caucus Chairman Jim Jordan in the position. I think that's something that Mark Levin could definitely agree with there. I don't know that much about Jim Jordan, but from what I can tell on the surface, he's a pretty solid dude. He was one of the people that helped Trey Gowdy to prosecute Hillary Clinton for the Benghazi fiasco, just as an example. Okay. I was just checking my YouTube notifications right there. Big loss is expected. In Missouri, Republican State Attorney General Josh Hawley has a 2-point lead over McCaskill after she faced criticism over an ad that says she's not one of those crazy Democrats. McCaskill also was using a private jet while she said she was on an RV campaign tour of the state. Well, it's kind of a small issue, and I would not really blame anybody who's like a liberal for still voting for her just because they agree with her principles. But still, yeah, that's dishonesty on your part, ma'am. News also broke in late October that her husband had been accused of domestic violence by his former wife. Related, Claire McCaskill's husband accused of hitting, tripping, and peeing on ex-wife. Yuck. That sounds like a dank meme that Lonely Wolf would send right there. Isn't it, Lonely Wolf? In Indiana, Donnelly is also behind in the polls against his Republican opponent, Mike Braun. Donnelly has portrayed himself as a moderate Democrat, but voted against President Donald Trump's Supreme Court nominee, Brett Kavanaugh, which Braun believes helped him in the polls. Okay. That's not really a hard-hitting piece of evidence that he is like an extremist of any sorts. I mean, it is a moderate position of either side of the political spectrum if you were to be opposing Brett Kavanaugh for his NSA spying positions. I mean, yeah, if you believe the rape accusations that were thrown at him, then yeah, I would say that that does make you a bit of an extremist. But if you are basing your criticism towards Brett Kavanaugh off of his NSA spying, then that does not make you an extremist in my book. That, in fact, makes you a pretty centrist / moderate dude. Anyway, Republican Governor Rick Scott is in a tight race with Nelson as he is trailing by just 2 points. Scott has attacked Nelson for failing to pass legislation in the Senate and has criticized him for the way he handled the Kavanaugh nomination process. For failing to pass legislation in the Senate. I don't know if that's necessarily a deal breaker, if that would necessarily be a deal breaker for me. Actually, no. I can comfortably say right now that it would not really be a deal breaker because hey, Ted Cruz for the longest time did not really get his way on Obamacare like for the last 4 years of Obama's tenure. And yet that does not really wane my support for him necessarily. Braun believes helped him in the polls. Texas Democratic senatorial candidate Representative Beto O'Rourke, who is running against incumbent Senator Ted Cruz, has raised over $69 million to try and secure a victory in the deep red state. However, O'Rourke remains down by over 6 points despite the historic fundraising numbers. Okay, so for those who keep on saying, well, okay, I don't know if there is like anybody who says that O'Rourke is definitely ahead of Cruz. But if there are any people out there who are saying that O'Rourke is definitely ahead of Cruz, like, there's your evidence for otherwise. But yeah, when it comes to O'Rourke versus Cruz, I cannot agree with O'Rourke's policy positions. I mean, you would have to change my own political beliefs before you change who I would support in that race. Although, just FYI, I don't live in Texas, so it's not really up to me. So it's kind of a moot point, but it's still interesting to talk about what international or not international, what national politicians you do or don't support. Still an interesting thing to talk about. I could at least give Ted Cruz money, though, although I've kind of refrained from giving him money ever since he kind of failed in the Republican primaries against Donald Trump and kind of flopped on his on him maintaining his lack of support towards Donald Trump. First, he was all like, vote your conscience. I'm not going to support the man who trashed my wife. And then like about a month or two later, he goes endorsing Trump for president. That was a sign of weakness right there on Ted's part. In Minnesota, Democratic Representative Keith Ellison is sitting behind his Republican opponent Doug Wardlow for Attorney General by a 7-point margin. Ellison, who also serves as deputy chairman of the Democratic National Committee, sits at 36% compared to Wardlow's 43%, according to a Star Tribune Minnesota Public Radio poll. NPR, that's so close to sounding like NPR. Poll released October 23rd. This comes as Ellison led Wardlow by around 5 points as of September 19, according to an earlier Star Tribune NPR poll, meaning there was a 12-point shift in just over a month. Wow. Another big race to watch will be the Georgia gubernatorial election, where Democratic candidate Stacey Abrams is taking on Secretary of State Brian Kemp. Abrams faces a tight race against Kemp, as she has taken heat for saying the alleged blue wave Democrats are expecting in the 2018 midterm elections is filled with documented and undocumented voters. I wish that they would cite the huge amounts of evidence for that more often, because I don't know, maybe there is election for there are massive amounts of undocumented voters, but it's mostly just a bunch of hearsay and vague generalities that people go off of. They don't go citing, there's this study that I have right here that proves my points that undocumented and illegal immigrants are voting for the Dems. Abrams has also spent hundreds of thousands of dollars of her own money trying to secure a victory. She previously served as the minority leader of the Georgia House of Representatives. The November 6th midterm elections will be a big indicator as to how Trump's support helps GOP candidates, as he has endorsed dozens of candidates across the U.S. and has held campaign rallies for many others throughout the last several months. End of article. Okay. Oh, excuse me. And so last but not least, USA Today. I think I find USA Today and US News to be kind of center-left news groups, but still fairly reliable in my opinion. Midterm elections 2018. Here are the races to watch as campaign heads to homestretch. Washington, one of the most closely watched midterm elections in recent memory, heads into the home stretch as polls give Democrats a solid chance of taking a majority in the House, while Republicans are favored to keep their narrow advantage in the Senate. Tuesday's election is widely regarded as a referendum on President Donald Trump's first 2 years in office, even though his name will not appear on the ballot. Well, no shit, Sherlock. I mean, that's kind of one of the things I'm getting tired of, these articles talking about the midterm elections. They go mentioning the obvious, that the president is not on the ballot. Obviously, mofos, obviously. Okay, so this article is not too long. Okay. Loudmouth Reviews says, fuck. Hey, Loudmouth, how are you doing? I mean, sorry that I haven't given the invite to anybody on for this news stream. I just wanted to make it a very quick news stream. Just catching up on some articles talking about the midterm elections, and then I was going to work further on that collaboration right afterwards. Trump has been a constant presence on the campaign trial. I think you meant to say trail there, USA Today writer. Appearing at rallies for GOP candidates in crucial Senate races, Trump's closing message has focused on immigration. Of course, that's like Trump's staple issue, even though he's been kind of weak on the wall. Anyway, Democrats tell voters they should be put in charge of Congress to serve as a check on Trump. Democrats hope to win governorships in Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, states that were key in electing Trump. Here are some races to watch. Okay, Lonely Wolf says, I do solo streams myself to read through articles. Really? I mean, I don't get the notifications much from your channel, Lonely Wolf. Here, I'm going to go to your channel here on my second screen. See if I... No, I don't have... I don't have the bell icon turned on for your channel. Okay. Now I do, though. Dude. Okay, I just saw your one playlist right there, and yeah, I mean your videos don't really end up in my subscription notifications or my recommendations at all for some odd reason. But anyway, I'm looking through your uploads playlist right here, and you have a lot of scheduled streams here. And I mean a lot. Like I think I saw at least 5 in the first page of your uploads playlist. Um, House, New Jersey's 7th district. Lonely Wolf 1980 says YouTube is censoring me. Are you sure, or are those just a whole bunch of off-air hangouts? I mean, do with your channel whatever you want, obviously, but still, it seems kind of like spamming if you're just gonna make a whole bunch of off-air hangouts and just let them lay dormant on your channel. Just in my personal opinion. But again, do whatever you want. It's not my business. Okay. House. New Jersey's 7th district. Republican Representative Leonard Lance's campaign for a 6th term against Democrat Tom Malinowski is one of 4 in New Jersey where Republicans face strong Democratic challengers. Well, it's freaking New Jersey. What do you expect? Polls. 2 polls conducted last week show Malinowski ahead. Monmouth University has Malinowski up by 3 points, while the New York Times Siena College poll has a Democrat up by 8 points. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so in New Jersey, no big surprise. Of course, the Democrat would be ahead of the Republican in that case. Virginia's 7th district, Representative Dave Bratt won a major upset in 2014 when he ousted GOP majority leader Eric Cantor during the Republican primary. Yeah, that was kind of one of the highlights of 2014 that Mark Levin was kind of highlighting on his show. He faces former CIA. Okay, thanks for scrolling down for me, article. Not. Okay. He faces former CIA officer Abigail Spanberger. Okay. Polls. Not sure of how I feel about that. Polls. Polls show the race at a virtual tie. Of the 3 conducted since mid-September, one showed a tie, one showed Spanberger up by 1 point, and the latest showed Brett up by 2 points. So that is a definite toss-up right there. Michigan's 8th district. Representative Mike Bishop has represented the district on the edge of the Detroit suburbs in one way or another for most of the past 20 years. Democrat Elisa Slotkin, a former intelligence officer and Defense Department official, made the race competitive. Polls. Bishop has held a steady but dwindling lead over Slotkin in most polls. A survey by the New York Times Siena College poll showed Slotkin with a... Where am I? Why does this article keep on scrolling me back up automatically? This is bull. Showed Slotkin with a 7-point edge. You know, I think I'm just gonna highlight whatever section I'm on so that I can remember my place. But anyway, all right. Texas's 32nd district. In the district just north of Dallas, 11-term GOP incumbent Representative Pete Sessions is in the race of his life, facing Democrat Colin Allred, a civil rights attorney and former football player for the NFL's Tennessee Titans. 11-term. Okay, yeah, so I can just go off, just by going off of that, not even having to read into the polls, that you definitely have an old dog. When people just generally speaking, there's a trend of a distaste towards these long-time politicians here, and I would not really blame them. I would not really blame people. In fact, I sympathize with them largely to have a distaste towards these old dogs that just remain in Washington, D.C. time and freaking time again. I think War Corp 666 even mentioned that there was this one this one representative of the House that served for like 32 terms. That's 64 years. The guy was being spoon-fed his own food, as War Corps had explained in that one rant video of his. Yeah, it was pretty pathetic. Like, dude, you should just go to the retirement home. But anyway, I'm kind of going off on a tangent. But you have like this old dog going up against a guy who is not only a civil rights attorney, and being pro civil rights is pretty much an objectively positive thing. And discounting for what civil rights positions Pete Sessions might have, it does not really compare to a person who like works in much closer proximity with people when it comes to civil rights. This being a civil rights attorney right here. And he's a former football player for the NFL's Tennessee Titans, so that definitely makes him more grassroots than Pete Sessions. And polls. 2 separate polls by the New York Times and Siena College suggest all red has momentum. A poll in September showed Sessions with a 1-point lead, but a poll conducted last week showed all red with a 4-point advantage. Okay, so it's kind of what I predicted. All red has definitely an edge over Sessions in that race. Not that big not big of an edge over Sessions. I mean, obviously because it's freaking Texas, but still. All right. Getting to the Senate, Indiana. Polling has shown a toss-up race between Democratic Senator Joe Donnelly and Republican Mike Braun. Okay, and this is the type of article that I was meaning to read right here. One that actually goes talking about the polls, and the possibility that of who might actually win and who might actually lose. I mean, the numbers get kind of boring, but still something helpful to keep in mind. North Dakota, Democratic incumbent Senator Heidi Heitkamp was down 9 points against Republican Kevin Cramer in a Fox News poll conducted in late October. Okay. I mean, it's a Fox News poll. People are probably going to cry bias on that one. The fact that the Republican is told to have an edge over the Democrat, and again, that source from a Fox News poll, it's pretty dismissible at that point, but still. Anyway, Missouri. Pollsters are divided over whether the race between Democratic Senator Claire McCaskill and Attorney General Josh Hawley is a jump ball, or whether Hawley has a slight advantage. Hawley led 49 to 46% in an Emerson poll conducted in November within the margin of error. Cultivam says, vote the not orange guy. Well, the orange guy is not running right now, Ham, so that's nothing to worry about. Anyway. So we're getting fairly close to the election, I say. Or fairly close to the end of this article. My bad. But yes, we are also getting fairly close to the election as well. So still a statement of fact there. Taking a sip of my water. All right. So, Texas. Democrat Beto O'Rourke seeks an upset win against GOP Senator Ted Cruz. What do the polls say? O'Rourke ranked in huge donations, but polls give Cruz an edge. Every poll in the past week and a half has Cruz with at least 50% of the vote. Okay, and something that I also forgot to mention about Cruz. I mean, I agree with the policies that the guy stands for, but really, if one was to be honest about Cruz, overall, he is bad PR for the Republican Party. So, either way, I would say that the Republican Party and right-wingers in general win in this. I mean, if Ted Cruz was to win the Senate election, then that's a vote for Republicans in the Senate. But if Ted Cruz loses for the Senate race, that means no more, or at least less bad PR for Republicans in that regard. So So anyway, a Lonely Wolf 1980 says, "Why would any country hold an election during No Fap November? It's going to fuck with rational judgment." No thanks, Wolf. Cult of Ham says, "Stupid Darky Con, forgot the hashtag." Oh yeah, that's right. Hashtag vote the not orange guy. I forgot that. Will you please fucking forgive me, you freaking ass clown? No. Cult of Ham says, "Cruz needs to be smothered with a bedpan, and you need to be smothered with shit." No. Only Wolf 1980. Apparently, Cruz is anti-FAP. Who cares? People will rub it out with their dead relatives watching. Oh, no, I don't need the dankness right now, Wolf. And yeah, as far as masturbation goes, I could not care less for what a person's personal position is on masturbation, and in this case being Cruz's, as long as the guy does not want to legislate on masturbation. Cold of Ham says, "Can't get much worse PR than Trump." That I can agree with, Cold of Ham. I mean, at least during the primaries, during the 2016 presidential election, Cruz was actually focusing more on policies. Trump was just making it a big-time personality contest. That is where, in a way, Cruz is better PR than Trump. When you like focus on the policies, when you focus solely on personality, though, like who has more charisma? Trump has more charisma, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of pick your poison on who's the better PR. But if you're more of a policy-driven guy yourself, well, then you'll think that Cruz is slightly more better PR than Trump. But if you purely judge it on who would you rather have a beer with, then you are going to think that Trump is better PR than Cruz. And that's what a majority of the supporters for Trump were thinking, was who has the better personality and who would I rather drink a beer with. Cold of Ham also says Cruz is a total beta male. Yeah, he is to an extent in the way that he originally said that he was not going to endorse Trump because Trump had smeared his wife. I mean, that I thought was definitely an alpha dog move on Ted Cruz's part. Like during the RNC, Cruz was refusing to endorse Trump, but then he completely, in his own words, became a servile puppy dog to Trump and endorsed him, and that's where the beta maleness comes from. Lonely Wolf says, "Make America dank again." Yeah, sure. Cult of Him says, "The one thing I like about Trump is how he totally cucks the GOP." I honestly think Trump is better on policy than Cruz. Right. I mean, I forgot you were more anti-free trade than what Cruz is. So of course, in that just being one example, Trump would be you would favor Trump more than Cruz. Cruz is one of the worst in a party of horrible politicians, says Cold of Ham. That is just your opinion, and I'm just gonna leave it at that, just so that I can get this article through. Tennessee, Republican Marsha Blackburn, who had the one dummy that Cold of Ham was talking about a picture with Metal Minister on. And by the way, it did not even really technically look like that Marsha Blackburn, that dummy of Marsha, was being hung necessarily by the neck. I mean, it looked like somebody was just hanging the dummy hat, just hanging the dummy by the dummy hat, just to have it like tied up in a high spot for people to see, more than it was an actual take Marsha Blackburn to the gallows type of representation there. Republican Marsha Blackburn leads Democrat Phil Bredesen. Democrats haven't won a statewide contest in Tennessee since 2006, when Bredesen won a second term as governor. Arizona, in the battle between Democratic Representative Kirsten Sinema and Republican Representative Martha McSally, one poll showed McSally up by 6 points, and another showed her with a 1-point lead. A third poll has Sinema up by 1 point. That is literally like cinema, like movie-related cinema. That is literally the word, just with a different spelling of a single letter. Weird name. Okay. Or maybe it's pronounced a little bit differently than what I'm actually pronouncing it. I don't know. Okay. Florida. Incumbent Democrat Bill Nelson maintains a slight lead over Republican challenger Governor Rick Scott. 3 separate polls conducted over the weekend show Nelson with leads of 4, 5, and 7 points, all giving the Democrat at least 50% of the vote. Yeah, okay. I mean, it's Florida. I mean, Florida is kind of Florida is kind of one of those flip states. So, I don't know. Anyway, Nevada. Senator Dean Heller is the only Republican facing re-election in a state Trump lost. Most polls showed Democrat Jackie Rosen with a slight lead within the margin of error, which that's kind of surprising. I mean, I do not know much about Dean Heller and how solid the guy is or whatever, but that's still kind of surprising. In a blue state, the guy has a slight lead within the margin of error, but still. Colton Fam says in the chat, hashtag DarkyCon won't disavow leftist hate. No, I will disavow both leftist and rightist hate. Okay, so governor's races. Georgia, Democrat Stacey Abrams is vying to become the first African-American woman governor in U.S. history. She is locked in a tight race with GOP Secretary of State Brian Kemp. Polls. Kemp has a 2-point lead in 3 of the past 4 polls, including the most recent by Emerson College, showing Kemp leading 49% to 47%. Abrams has a 1-point lead in the 4th. Florida. Democratic Tallahassee Mayor Andrew Gillum aims to become Florida's first black governor. He ran a liberal campaign while GOP candidate Representative Ron DeSantis emphasized his close ties to Trump. Okay. I find that to be a bad idea, is for people to be like relying their entire reputation off of another politician. Like, just go off of your own reputation and your own policies. Do not piggyback purely off of another politician. That just makes you look like a puppy dog for that guy. I mean, suffice to say, it makes you look like the guy's pet rather than your own individual, your own thinking individual human being. Polls. Gillum has a slight lead in most recent polls, well within the margin of error. A Quinnipiac poll released Monday showed Gillum with a 7-point lead. End of article. And so that's all I have to say. As far as final commentary goes, Lonely Wolf in the chat says Darky Khan disavows retardation on both sides. Yeah, I tried my best anyways in that area of Lonely Wolf. But yeah, as far as what I have to say, I think that there's a high possibility that the Democrats will at least take the House of Representatives. I mean, that one example being the New Jersey seat being a toss. Well, actually, no, not a toss-up, but being more leaning for the Democratic candidate. And then there was that one. Okay, let me see. The Texas 32nd district, where that one old dog Republican was running against that grassroots Democrat. I think that that's another example of how plausible it is that the Democrats will take over the House of Representatives. As far as Senate goes, I am not completely convinced on that. In fact, just generally speaking, it seems to be like just a generally accepted fact that Republicans will at least keep the Senate, at least, but that Democrats will take the House of Representatives. Although unless you're Secular Hawk, who thinks that Democrats will take both houses of Congress. As far as like the big one goes, like the one that people seem to be most talking about, and no, I'm not talking about Ocasio-Cortez's campaign. I'm talking about Ted Cruz versus Beto O'Rourke. I think Ted Cruz is going to keep his seat. But if he loses that election, ultimately, you won't have him be making bad PR for the right and the Republicans. But if he wins, hey, that's another vote and another voice for right-wing ideals nonetheless. Anyway, That's all I have to say. What do I have to say to my audience? Get out the vote. I mean, I don't even really care that much if you're Republican or Democrat, left or right, liberal or conservative, a Bernie bro or a Trumpist, or anything like that. Get out the vote. Be passionate about politics. What I cannot stand most of all is when people want to be purposefully ignorant, I say, about politics. I mean, I guess I cannot really blame them because politics is rather depressing and soul draining, but still, I would encourage my fellow Americans, get out and vote. That's all I have to say. See y'all in the election tomorrow. And see y'all later. This is the Dark Conservatarian signing out, and God bless.